Afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello? Sawadee. So I just flew in from Hanoi, Vietnam last night so I could be here to talk to the families about majors, colleges, applications, and how to achieve your dreams. Let me just introduce myself briefly. My name is Danny. I'm the founder and CEO of Point Avenue. I've been in education here in Asia for about 12 years. Before that, I was born in Korea. I immigrated to America at the age of 5. I grew up in Georgia. I went to West Point, which is a military academy. My older brother went to MIT. And 12 years ago, we started education company in China and now in Southeast Asia. So across the past 12 years, I've personally coached our team members. We've coached hundreds of students to gain acceptances to the top universities. Majority of our success has been in US, in Canada, and in the UK. So these are the top universities: Oxbridge, Harvard, MIT, Stanford. Every year we have these results from our students here who attend public schools and also private international schools in Bangkok. So let's go ahead to the next slide. Somebody doing the slide? Oh, you got the, okay. All right, so this right here is our agenda. You can see we have really 3 sections. Advice for parents about the admissions process, choosing a major. So choosing a major comes before choosing a college, because colleges are ranked based upon your major, what we call demonstrated interest. So if I want to study computer science, Carnegie Mellon, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign are top universities. But if I want to study literature or humanities, then we have to consider other schools. So also we have 2 of our mentors here. We have Cookie, that's her nickname, but her official name is Charlotte. And then we also have Grant, and they've been mentoring students for a very long time, and they're really excited to also talk to you guys. They graduated from UNC, Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and they will be sharing with you about majors and colleges. So this is a little bit of our results. You can see here, we have also helped many students and families receive financial aid. So financial aid is needs-based, based upon the family's income, because universities are expensive, right? U.S. universities, for example, are about $80,000 a year. So probably like 2 times or 2.5 times that of an international school here in Thailand. And then we've also helped students achieve scholarships. So unlike financial aid, scholarship is based upon academic merit. So there's many scholarships. When I was a kid, many, many years ago, I received some money for left-handed scholarship. They actually had in America left-handed scholarship because I'm left-handed. So there's a lot of scholarships out there. You guys can help your parents save money. And then we've also helped students gain acceptances to top universities around the world. Okay, so that's my part. I'm going to pass it off to Cookie here, who's going to share with you about the right major. Thank you. You want this? Oh.
All right. I know that one of the reasons most of you have signed up online and are here today is to look at colleges and the majors. So before you pick your college, I highly recommend that you consider your major, because just as Danny said, depending on what you want to study helps you decide where you should go. You don't want to go to the wrong school for the major that you're interested in. You want to go to the best school that's going to give you the best results. Now, how can parents help in this process? It's a lifelong process if you think about it. It's not just something you decide last minute to put on your applications. You don't choose your major in the first grade when you're 6 years old. Of course not. But what parents do is help students, help their children explore the world, see everything out there that there is to see. Because how would you know that you would be great at science if you've never tried much science? How would you know that you could be a great chef if you've never tried cooking? There are so many things to do, and without exploring or sampling a bit of the world and a bit of life, you just won't know. So encourage your children to explore their passions. What is it that they like to do? What do they do in their free time? How can they deep dive more into that as kids? But as they get older and they're in high school, encourage your children to get involved in things like clubs, sports, music, other extracurriculars that their school offers. This is a way to branch out. Parents also help kids stick to a timeline. Now, that's easier said than done, and that's part of what we as mentors help kids do here at Point Avenue. But knowing that your kids have a lot going on, they're trying to learn, they're trying to have fun, they're trying to grow, how are you able to help keep them on track for their future goals? You can see farther in the future than they can, so it's very important to help that. Foster lifelong confidence by helping your children do some things on their own. This means there's going to be times where children trip and fall. That's normal. We all do. But we all as people deserve that chance to try things that we're not even good at yet, and maybe never will be. But if we don't get to try, then it's always mom and dad doing things for us or with us or in front of us. We need our own chance to learn and grow. And lastly on here, love your child for who they are, not just what they do. Now here's an example about that. Let's say you've just attended your child's sports game, whatever that might be. And in that game, they scored 3 goals. After the game, you say, wow, you scored 3 goals. That's amazing. Good for you, right? I mean, who wouldn't say that? Of course. Congratulations. At the same time, because that's what they did, they scored 3 goals. Great news. But guess what else might be missing from that conversation? You know what impressed me most was not those 3 goals, but the other 10 that missed. The fact that you kept trying and trying and trying. You never gave up. The time you were knocked down and you fell over and you got back up. You never gave up. That's who they are, not just what they did. So, what are your kids' interests? Do they like animals? Do they like cooking? Do they like sports? Do they like building things? Do they like destroying things? What do they do? Can you see the themes of interest your child might have by simply the things that they already do? What are they good at? What are their abilities? Well, you're not good at anything you haven't tried yet, right? And most of us are not good at something we just tried for the first time. It takes time. So we can't assume that a student won't be good at this subject or that subject if they've never had time to give it a try or to really enjoy it from a teacher who also enjoys it. And everybody, there are some more seats up front. Feel free, walk up here. It doesn't bother me. Just come on up. Come on up. No worries. Are you going to come with mom up here? No? Okay. So how can a parent help some of this? Frankly, nobody knows your children as well as you do. So what can you see in your children? You've known them from day one. What can you see to help encourage? What can you see to help give them opportunities to try new things and to try old things again? So in the grades through high school, 9, 10, 11, 12, in some schools those are called year 10, 11, 12, and 13, but we use the U.S. system in describing the grades. We like to get kids to, in the 9th grade or the first year of high school, explore a variety of interests. Broad spectrum. Try new things. I have a student I'm working with right now who's always liked badminton. She's never played it on a team, and she's never even had a lesson. But she thinks it's fun just to hit the birdie back and forth. So for her, she's like, oh, I said, well, are you going to try out for the team when you get to high school? And she's just now started. She's like, oh, no, I don't even really know how. I was like, oh, well, how could you learn more? And she's like, well, I'm not good enough to be on the team. I'm not even going to try out. So she decided because she wasn't going to do that, she was going to go help at the middle school nearby, play on their courts because she was at that school and she knows the coach. And so guess what? Fast forward only 2 or 3 weeks later, she's watched a few YouTube videos. She's taught herself some techniques, and now she's an assistant coach with this team. Now, she's not teaching badminton technique that much. She's a beginner, but she's an older student, and she can be a role model to those middle school students in their athletic training and in their perseverance and in their attitudes. Now she's telling me, I think I'll try out for the high school team when it comes around in the season. Okay, great. There's all kinds of ways to try new things. As 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade roll along, the older you are, the higher up in the grades you are, the more you want to consider, what all am I doing right now? Am I doing a little bit too much that I'm too busy? That's the time to start trimming things down, specializing in your favorite 1, 2, or 3 activities. You don't need 5 or 6 activities. In fact, you may not have time. But what's your favorite thing? What would you like to become more of an expert in? And that's where you can start honing that down. 12th grade, same thing. You're getting ready for your applications and whatnot. You've already been busy with really good activities. But the 11th grade year is kind of the key year to consider, what is my expertise in my high school years? Have I done enough research? Have I done enough activity that I'm now kind of a high school expert on this topic? That's the area to self-promote and see what you can strengthen. Now, let's look at how some of these happen. Explore. Let's go back to that 9th grade level. Now, honestly, you've been helping your kids explore their whole lives, and that's great. Now, let's look at what can they explore when they first start high school. What does this high school have that helps them? It might be a music curriculum. It might be sports. It might be drama club. It might be singing. It might be photography. It might be graphic design. It might be, who knows what else. The schools have amazing choices. And I encourage students to consider things outside of their schools. What is there that you might enjoy that your school doesn't offer? Is there a place in town that specializes in the kind of anime that you like to draw? Can you work on your artistic skills, your computer design skills, your gymnastics, things that are different than what school offers? Come on up front. There's plenty of seats. Help yourself. What can you help your child try in a wide spectrum? And then as you get into the 10th grade, all right, you've tried a bunch of things in the 9th grade. What is it you want to continue? If you can show continuation, 9 through 12 or 9 through 11, that's going to look really good that you've been committed to something. At the same time, don't stick with something that's miserable. If you don't like it, ditch it. Try something else. The idea, though, is to have a broad enough spectrum that you're able to put more things in. And as you get better and better, you're ready for the deep dive. Let's say one of your pet projects since the 9th grade has been recycling. Have a nice lamp. Let's pretend that's something that you've been interested in your whole life, and you've just kind of always been a proponent of recycling. Well, 10th grade comes along, and you're like, I've been paying attention to this in the school. I think I'm ready to convince the school to put more bins around the school because nobody's recycling here, and I think it's something that's important, so I'm going to start a fundraiser to change at my school. Well, let's say something goes along from that. Maybe you start a club. Maybe you bring in new people. Maybe it grows a little. And now you're saying, wow, I've really enjoyed this. Environmental science obviously is something that's important to me. What else can I learn? What else can I take to the next level? And let's just stick with this theme of recycling. If somebody was that passionate and they've created some change at their school, don't stop there. What else can you do for your community, the environment? What connections do you have with people at university level or companies nearby where your parents work or other relatives? What can you do to bring about change in your community? Now we're crossing into not just what makes sense for you as a person or your school or your community. We go bigger. Is there research? Is there some kind of change that might happen because of you? Not you just reacting. All right, let's look at some examples of some of these. Extracurricular activities. We've talked about a handful of things like clubs. If you've been involved in a club, what can you do about becoming a leader in that club? Not just attending. If you've enjoyed that club, can you bring more to the party? Can you add to what you're already doing? Studying online. Now, this is something that's really popular to do, especially if your school is an IB curriculum or has A-levels. If you're able to take some additional courses, some schools restrict you to the 4 main courses in your juniors and senior year. Well, what if you wanted to also take physics, but you had to choose between biology and physics? Khan Academy and some of the other online classes that are available can give you some college credit. They can give you good experience, and it does look good on your resume. It looks good in your college applications that you can show, I have done some self-studying. That's the kind of student I am. And I did well in that self-studying. That really can help. And it gives you a taste of the other fields. Competition, competing, sports, whatnot, summer programs, internships, volunteering, all of these things add up. Let's look at the quality of the kind of activities that you can do. Down here at level 4, this is participating in your school clubs. This is great. Everybody should do this and give this a try. A little bit higher level is becoming a leader in your your high school groups, the clubs and things that are available. Tier 2 would be the things we were talking about of running your own kind of initiatives. What can you bring about? What can you start? What can you fundraise or help a problem in your community? Tier 1, those are the really rare gems. Most of us maybe don't get to that level, but it's still worth trying, and you never know. Many of our students who've had brilliant and successful things never said from the start, okay, I'm going to start taking steps to do something brilliant. Not really. They just did something that they felt was important or that they loved. And suddenly it started blossoming and surprised them, surprised their family how successful it was. You never know. All right. This is something everybody tends to want to consider when coming up with a major. Does this major field of study, and when I say major, just so we are clear on this, the U.S. schools calls the field that you are studying your major. When you get to school, they say, hey, what's your major? Meaning, what are you studying in? In the UK, they say, what's your course? What course are you studying? Same thing. What discipline are you focusing on? So different majors make different amounts of money. We know that. But every country, it's a little different. Engineers tend to be high up there. In some places, doctors, surgeons, attorneys tend to be high up there. But every country's different. The main thing is that going to be the main reason you pick a major? I hope not. Because you also want to do things that are important to you. Can you make a living off the thing you choose? That might be nice. So popular degrees can be anything from business administration to psychology to being a teacher. All kinds of things. But it should be something you consider, can I support myself if I study this course or this major? Now, anyone that goes to college will have over their lifetime higher earnings than folks who don't. I have a feeling if you're sitting in this room, if you're joining us online, you already know that. That's not generally your concern. You're already planning for colleges. The question is, what will you study and how will you know? I remember when my son, who is now at Columbia University studying law, when he was in, I think, high school, he heard a speech from somebody that said, many of you in the audience will have careers, jobs, and professions that don't even have a name yet. The future brings new things. What can you study? What can you follow with your passion? And how can you make that a success? Now we're going to talk about where you can study, what kind of colleges, and what will help you make some of those choices. All right.
So we talked a little bit about finding your major. And one thing that's important, especially with U.S. schools, is that you definitely want to know where you're going, and most of our students do. But the U.S. schools are unique in that the first 2 years are kind of general courses, giving you a good foundation in a lot of different areas. And in the second 2 years, that's when you specialize. So you've got some wiggle room in the U.S. So if you go in as a chemistry major and you decide, I kind of found more satisfaction in this biology classes I took, Switching in the U.S. is easy. You can also double major in the U.S. A little bit harder in the U.K. Generally there you go in for one subject. And if you want to change, if you decide, economics is not for me, that's more difficult to change in the U.K. So it's something to keep in mind, and one major difference in U.S. and U.K. So it's more difficult to change in U.K. It's not impossible, but you kind of have to back up and go in another door. Easier in the U.S. So you've decided on your major. So what you want to do is aim for colleges that match it. Again, how can parents help? Provide expert resources and mentors. You can certainly do this yourself. It's a lot of work. It's hard to keep focused. You can also turn it over to people like us at Point Avenue. That certainly helps. Encourage them to find colleges that match their goals. So not all colleges are the same. You probably know that, you've heard of MIT. If you've heard of MIT, you probably also know that it is an engineering school, one of the best. So different schools have different focuses. They're better at different things. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. Help them create and stick to an application timeline. This is important. To do it right, it's a lot of ordered work to move through the application process. You build the demonstrated interest in your lower years in school. You will focus on testing, which we'll talk about in a bit, in your middle years. And the last year, you'll focus on the application process almost exclusively. So keeping on track is very important. You want to, and this is a theme you're going to hear a couple times, you want to be able to step back, have your children succeed at doing these things themselves where they can. That's how they're going to succeed in life. You can push and push and push and make them do things, but when you stop pushing, chances are they'll stop. It's better to give them the skills themselves and love your child for who they are, not which brand name school they attend. And I don't think anyone in this room or online is this way, but if your love of your child is wrapped up in him attending or her attending Harvard, maybe you want to rethink that. You want ideally your son or daughter is the one who has to live their life, and you want them to be happy. You can guide them, you can push them, but love them for who they are. So things to consider when you're looking for a college. Now, these bubbles kind of, generally the bigger the bubble, the more important they're going to be to you, generally. College ranking is the first one. Okay, that's a pretty skewed metric. It's interesting, but just because one school is ranked 10th and one is ranked 20th does not necessarily mean the 20th is worse for you. It might be the perfect fit for you. So ranking, it's interesting. It gives you an idea of everything, but it's not as important. Expected family contribution. College, as Danny noted, is not cheap. It is expensive. Some schools cost more than others. Some schools have more financial aid than others available. So your expected family contribution is a big part of your decision. If you can't afford this level of school, then you need to look at this level of school. It's a fact of life. We had to do that with our own kids. We're not rich, but we were able to provide him with a great education. And I'm able to say that he is now in Columbia University, starting his second year of law school, and he's doing very well. And Cookie, who you just heard from, is also my wife, and I give her a lot of the credit for the Columbia connection as well, because it was a team effort. But that expected family contribution, now here's the key. Universities are going to expect that a foreign student is going to pay more. One of the reasons they like foreign students is that they do pay more and they pay the bills. But there's still financial aid available, but they're going to expect you to contribute to that. Now, generally, whatever you're paying for international school or high school, they are going to expect you to pay 1.5 times at least that amount per year for your expected family contribution. So it's important to keep that in mind. Majors and programs, that is obviously very important. If you are in economics, maybe London School of Economics is calling you, maybe not MIT, an engineering school, because in your field, people will respect the London School of Economics more, and it'll make it easier to get that high-paying job to cover everything. And then this is one of the second biggest bubble, these two, grades and test scores. There's a level which your GPA and your SAT is going to put you in a general way. If you got perfect SAT and perfect grades, then you're going to be up at the top. And then there are lots of different areas in between. That doesn't necessarily mean schools are better or worse because of that. They can be a very good fit, but those grades will determine where you're going generally. Those grades and those test scores. And finally, location. This is important for some people, but not for everyone. Do you want to be in the East Coast? Do you want to be in the West Coast? Do you want to be in a city? Do you want to be near family or friends in the U.S.? So sometimes that enters into it as well. So I talked about testing, and let me talk about that real briefly. You'll notice that you're going to be doing your testing in the first 3 grades because you want to be clear of it by year, because all of your time is going to be taken up with applications and essay writing. TOEFL, which is the test of English as a foreign language, is a baseline test that you will need unless you are attending a 4-year university or 4-year high school taught in English. Even then, you might need a TOEFL test. A TOEFL test is 3. It's reading, writing, and comprehension, and reading, writing, and speaking. And the top score is 120. You want to have 100 points. That baseline, any college, you're good to go. So that's kind of the baseline. Now, you can study for it, and you can take it multiple times. You can increase your score. SAT is the other big one in the U.S. The SAT is the Scholastic Aptitude Test. Top score is 1600. If you are 15 or above, you're in an extremely good position. But even if you have lower scores, there are places that are really good fits for you. It's just a matter of finding them. But the key is mainly in grade 11 is when you want to finish up all of that testing. So 3 times, and so you'll start at the beginning of your grade 11 year, maybe in the summer before. You will do some test prep. Then you will take the first test. You will do some test prep, take the second test prep, and then take the third test. Unless you get a 1600 in the first go-round, which case you're done. So you can, with test prep, increase your score significantly between each time. You're also learning more in school, and that helps as well. So we recommend three times of taking that test. And first go round, you might get a 1250, 1300 maybe. And then from there, you're going to go up 50 to 70 points. And then the next time, maybe another 50 points. And that's going to put you in a very good position. It's a lot of work on top of everything else to study for the SAT. Worth it, worth it, worth it. So keep that in mind. So as I said, there's a kind of a graph for GPA and SAT scores. This happens to be Harvard's. Every school has this. If you go online and you search GPA, SAT graph, and the school name, you will find these. Now, obviously, this is SAT score down here, 1600, perfect score, 4.0, perfect score. No surprise, Harvard is taking a lot of people from up here. They're also occasionally taking someone over here. Now, that person probably has an interesting, compelling story of why maybe their SAT score isn't that good. Maybe they were in the military, they're coming back to school. Maybe there's something that they've done that they have been able to show through their demonstrated interest or their personal essays. So that's helpful. But generally speaking, if you're not up here, it's going to be difficult. Interestingly, this is the people who have been rejected by Harvard. Now, you will notice there's still a lot of people up here. So not everyone with perfect grades and perfect SAT gets in. The difference is that demonstrated interest that Cookie was talking about, and also the idea that you are making a good contribution to the school, and you have a compelling way of explaining all of that. So having your personal essay and your extracurricular activities stand out is important. MIT, same story. This is Harvard, very big in the humanities. MIT, very big in engineering. Same deal. People up here get in 4.0, 1600, go anywhere you want. But same deal, not everyone gets it. So the personal essay and the scores are both important, your extracurriculars as well. So once you understand your scores and what you have, you're going to be doing a lot of research on each of the schools. That's one of the things we specialize in here at Point Avenue. We know schools, we research schools all the time. We are finding the schools that are good fits for students. And one great resource is U.S. News and World Reports. You guys have probably heard of U.S. News and World Reports. They rank all colleges, and they have a huge database of information on each college. So even though I said that rankings were not the be-all and end-all, this website, which happens to have rankings, is a very great resource. Now, don't get too freaked out about the next slide. There's a lot of numbers on it. So this is some of the types of information that you can get just from U.S. News and World Reports. Now, this is actually part of a much larger grid, and I've hidden a bunch of columns just to put up some of the stuff. But this is the ranking right here. I told you that didn't matter, but you got to put them in some kind of order. So Princeton is the top. Let's look at this for a minute. It's a suburban setting. So if you are dying to go to a big city, maybe Princeton, not for you. Small school, 8,000 kids. Total of the undergrad is 5,000. Percent of international undergrad freshmen, 14.5%. That's not bad. If you've got good grades and good extracurriculars and a great personal essay, as a international student, you have a good chance. There's enough slots there. There's 681 slots a year. Tuition, $60,000. Total cost of attendance, that includes food and a place to live, is going to be in the $83,000 range. And then this is the important part here. So this is the 25th percentile SAT and the 75th percentile SAT. So your score, you're going to want to be here in the middle for the minimum chance at getting in, unless you have a very compelling story that allows you to be on the lower side of 1,500. And those do happen. And we are also very good at helping highlight those when they exist. But if you're above this 1,560, if you're above the 75th percentile, you are better than it. Out of every 4 people, you're better than the other 3. That puts you a lot closer to getting in. So that's why you look at those numbers. So if you've got a 1,560, you're at the upper end of that, and that looks good. And their overall acceptance rate, 5.7, that's kind of low. They are selective. A lot of people want to get in. So this is the top 15. We'll do the same. This is the top 28 because only the next 14 fit on the screen. Let's pick a school out of totally at random. University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill just happens to be where I went to school and Cookie went to school. So it's got a ranking that goes up and down. I don't live and die by what number it is because I went to that school, but it is a suburban school. You'll notice it's a lot cheaper. It's a state school. And because of that, the price is going to be lower. Now, your price as an international student is going to be pretty much all of that, whereas your price as an in-state North Carolina student would be less than that. But still, all of that is less than Princeton, which is like 70,000. And again, SAT scores a little bit lower here, 25th percentile, 1330, 75th percentile, 1500, a little bit more manageable, a little bit more real world for a lot of us. Not all of us live up in 1600 land. I didn't. Of course, what time that I took it, I think it only went up to 1400 when I took it. And then the other nice thing for international is this 19.2 acceptance rate. So they accept a lot. Now, that's a little tricky because I know this because I went there. UNC, obviously a state school, they're going to be pulling a lot more in-state students. So the acceptance rate for international students is going to be lower than that, but nonetheless, it's higher. Same deal. This is up to number 43. You'll see here that these numbers start to flatten out in the top 50, which is what we're looking at. So there's not a lot of movement here because all of these schools are very similar in profile, and they're looking for the same kids. Plus, most of the kids that are applying are in this range for an SAT score anyway. And then for the last through the 50, similar deal. You know, some schools have very high acceptance rates. So depending, you know, those are good ones for international students. Also, the key is what the school does, because it doesn't matter if you can get into it if it doesn't serve your needs. So we're going to look at two just really quick cases where a school is very unique and worth your time. This is Northeastern University. They are known for putting students into graduate programs very soon after school. So if you know you want to get a master's, you want an MBA, for example, but you want to get an economics degree and you want really good internship opportunities for that year after college, and you want to have really good paid opportunities in that year to get experience before you go for your MBA, Northeastern might be something you'd want to look at, which you wouldn't necessarily know by looking at those walls of numbers about the school. So knowing a little bit about what you want to do in the future is also helpful. Another very unique school, St. John's College, is known for sending students to the number one college in the U.S. for sending students to PhD programs in humanities. So if you want to be a professor of philosophy, or you want to be a professor in the humanities at all, St. John's is a college you might want to consider. You might not get that message from just looking at numbers. So knowing how colleges can be unique is also important. And it's something we do here, but you can also research these online by going to the schools, reading up on schools. So very quickly, these are some of the top schools. These are the ones that we all really, really want to get into. We're not all going to get into them. I didn't. United Kingdom, some of the best schools for business and economics: Oxford, Cambridge, London School of Economics. This is going to be a recurring theme in England. United States, UPenn, it's an Ivy, UC Berkeley, University of Chicago, NYU, University of Texas, Austin, and University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Very, very good. Canada, Toronto, McGill, British Columbia, Australia, Melbourne, Australian National University, Sydney, for sciences and technology. So MIT, Caltech, Georgia Tech, Carnegie Mellon. Those are all big engineering schools. Waterloo, Toronto, University of BC, British Columbia, and Australia, Melbourne, and University of Technology, Sydney. The humanities: Oxford, Cambridge, again, kind of a recurring theme. Harvard, Columbia, shout out to my kid who's at Columbia. Pomona College, Stanford University, UCLA, Emory. Canada, Toronto, University of BC. You get the idea. Now, visual and performing arts. Again, this is where you're going to get into schools that have design in their name, and also Oxford and University College London. So these are the types of schools that rise to the top in the performing arts field. The point here is that there are schools that are good in every single area. Now let's talk briefly now about different top schools for different SAT scores. We all want to be at 1,600. We can't all be at 1,600, but there are good schools in every single range. This is the top range, 340 up to 1,600. No surprise here. These are the names that we've been saying at the top of the list the whole time. Duke University, arch rival of UNC. It's a great school, but as we say, Duke is puke, but that's because it's a school rivalry, but they're an awesome school. For 1,200 to 1,340, this is a much more average, attainable score that a lot of kids have. USC, New York University, very good school. They are less score heavy. University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, very good school, considered a public Ivy, as they call them, a public school that is at the top of its game. Northeastern, Cornell, Boston University, University of California, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. It's a good school. UVA, Boston College. Now, these are not top schools, but they're awesome schools. And even lower, 1,000 to 1,200 range, you're still looking at University of Cali, Los Angeles, University of Texas, Austin, which is an awesome school, Penn State, Virginia Tech, University of Florida. There are a lot of schools that are very, very good and very good in certain areas. And again, even for a score as low as the 830s, which happens, there are schools that are good matches for that. Schools you've probably heard of, like Michigan State, Temple, San Diego State, Arizona State. All of these schools have good programs, and you don't have to be at the top of your class, at the top of your game to have a good university experience. So that's the quick version of that. Before I turn it over to Danny for a look at a case study of a student, any questions on what I've gone over? Any thoughts or questions? Yeah, he was asking, depending on the course of study that you choose, does the SAT score different? And Danny is saying that this is one that he wants to take. So,
The answer is
yes, it depends a lot on the popularity and how many people are trying to get in. But
All right. Thank you very much, Cookie and Grant. I'm back. For the parents who just joined us, my name is Danny. I've also been mentoring students for quite some time. The answer is yes. For example, if I'm applying to top engineering schools, they care about my GPA, grade point average, in my STEM-related courses. So when my brother applied to MIT, they looked at all of his high-level math and high-level science courses that he took, looked at that GPA separate from the overall GPA. Because actually, when he went to MIT, he didn't take a single English course. It was all in the STEM subjects. Of course, if you're applying for engineering, you're applying for business, you're applying for mathematics, you're applying for physics, your SAT math score coming from Asia, coming from Thailand, should be a near perfect 800. 790, 780, 800. And then remember, the SAT is out of a 1600. The verbal, which is 400, writing or language, 400 reading comprehension, should be a competitive score of at least a 650. So 800, 650, 1450 is generally competitive for top 30 universities. If I'm thinking Ivy Leagues, and other top universities like MIT, Caltech, at least a 1550 out of a 1600. I know I saw some jaw dropping, but the good news about the SAT is, number one, the test has changed. I can say that the formatting is a little bit easier because, one, it's a shorter test. So they've actually shrunk the test down by about an hour. So it's only 2 hours and some change. It used to be nearly a 4-hour test with an essay component, no longer essay component. Number two, it's a digital test. And for some reason, students do better on digital tests, I guess because they play a lot of video games, right? So it's no longer paper-based tests, but it's a digital test. And we've had students this year who are applying to colleges who have scored 1500, 1530, 1540 on the digital format. So that's some good news. Good thing about the SAT also is it's a test that you can master. It's not like an IQ test where you can't prepare for. It is a test with a lot of repetition, a lot of drills and skills, and mastering the specific concept types. You can master the SAT. Understand that the SAT tests for mathematics up to pre-calculus level. So pre-calculus level is what's needed, not calculus or linear algebra or above. And in order to do well on the verbal and the writing, you have to read. Because reading speed is important, right? Because these are all timed tests. So you have a limited time to read a passage and answer questions. So if you don't spend time reading, you're not going to just all of a sudden become good at reading comprehension. So we do offer very intensive SAT classes here at Point Avenue. What I want to do is just share with you guys an example of a case study. So this is one of our students actually, and the GPA is 9.3. Basically, it's a near 4.0 GPA. 9.3 is on a scale of 10. Some schools do it on a scale of 10. Some schools do it on a scale of 4.0. Some schools do it on a scale of 45, IB. Some schools do it on, so it's A-level, IBs, advanced placement, or standard. But basically, there's a conversion chart for all of this, right? Like an international conversion chart. And then the SAT score was about a 1,500. You no longer have to take SAT 2s. And something to notice is because U.S. universities are quite expensive, if you as a family cannot contribute more than 35,000 US dollars, so about 1 million Thai baht, right? Which is the cost of an international school, for example, Shrewsbury, NIST, ISB, BPS. If you cannot contribute more than 1 million Thai baht per year, minimum of course, then your chance of getting financial aid is almost zero, right? Meaning that when international students apply to U.S. universities, generally they are not going to give as much financial aid to Thai passport holders, Korean passport holders, because majority of the students at U.S. universities are U.S. passport holders, right? About 80%, 85%, depending on the university. So majority of the financial aid goes to the students from inner city schools, orphans, kids who never have the chance to go to private schools, right? Like if you right now you're paying already 1 million Thai baht for your kid's education, and then you say, I don't have any money, I can only pay $0, there's a mismatch. But if I'm in the US and I'm going to a public school which is free, then of course I may not have money to afford even anywhere close to 35,000. You guys understand, right? So also the expected family contribution that Grant was talking about in the financial aid is actually based upon your forms that you have to submit, right? So you have to provide tax statements, you have to provide income statements. It's not just some arbitrary number. But just understand, if you want to receive financial aid as a family, you have to be able to demonstrate that you can pay at least a minimum of 35,000 US dollars. Now, over the past 12 years, we have helped students gain 100% financial aid or scholarship. This past year, one of our students gained acceptance to UNC Chapel Hill and received a full ride. They even pay for his airfare ticket once a year to come back home, right? So, but those are you know, one in many, right? So understand that the college can give you 20K, 25K, 30K, 40,000 a year in financial aid. Understand that those are also conditional, meaning if I get in and I receive this financial aid package and all of a sudden I'm failing all of my classes, then I'm going to take that away. I mean, that's a given, right? So you have to meet the requirements expected of the university. And UK schools are 3 years for undergraduate, and US schools are 4 years. So you have to meet that requirement. So anyways, what we always need to consider is whatever. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Just on the topic of the financial aid, how would the US or how would the US or UK university assess the ability for the, you know, for example, a Thai family to be able to pay for the financial aid, specifically because, you know, a lot of the family here who are sending their kids to international school, they're probably a mix of professionals and a business owner. So I think assessing the ability to support your kids for college when you're working for a company, it's easier. But what if you are a business owner, just like a lot of the Asian families do? How would they assess that?
Good question. So understand that when you apply to universities, you have the option to select, I am applying for financial aid, or you have the option to select, I am not. So that's clear, yes or no. If I apply for financial aid, then I have to actually fill out specific forms. In those forms, there's like documents that you need to submit to the universities for them to verify, for example, how much income my mom and my dad are generating, right, on an annual basis, for example. The other factors that you have to consider is when you apply to university, you have to say what school you're attending, and they will know, right, that a lot of these international schools do not provide like 100% scholarships or financial aid. You basically have to pay for that tuition. And admissions officers know that the general range of international schools in Thailand and China, etc., are about 30 to 40,000 US dollars a year. This is non-boarding, right? These are day schools. Hello. And then the third thing is you also have to list your parents' occupation, right? And admissions officers know generally if it's a family business that there's the ability to pay for universities, right? So like Asian family business, generally the individuals admissions officers understand that you have the means to be able to pay, because on the application you have to write like what your parents do. Now, if your father is, let's say, like an employee of a company, then that's a different story. But if your father's title is chairman and CEO of a family business, then it's quite understood that you'll be able to afford at least, a certain level, maybe not 80,000, but a certain level. And you also have to list how many siblings you have and if the siblings are attending university or not. So a lot of these factors are all considered when admissions reviews your financial aid, your needs. And then separate from that is scholarships. So scholarships, once again, is nothing about like how much my parents generate income. It has nothing to do with that. All they're going to really look at is merit-based. So my extracurricular activities, how outstanding my profile is, how great my scores are, and my testing is. And then based on my competencies and level of competitiveness, the university will say, hey, we'll give you 5,000, 10,000 US dollars in terms of scholarships, which gets deducted from your tuition. Did that answer your question? Yeah. And of course, there are specific forms. We have an entire database of how to do it. We guide parents through it. But that's really, getting to the technical part of it, but that's the general idea.
On the same topic, so is it fair to summarize that applying for financial aid affect the chance of getting admitted or not, but applying for a scholarship doesn't? Is that a fair conclusion?
Yes. So to a certain level, if I apply for zero financial aid, obviously then I would be highly competitive, because from an admissions perspective, I can pay full tuition. If I'm applying for financial aid, there's universities that, this is getting super technical, need blind, which basically means that when I look at your admissions, when I look at your application, I will not know if you're applying for financial aid or not. So meaning it will have no disadvantage, right? But there are universities that are not need blind, meaning they will know that you're applying for financial aid. And in those cases, if I have two kids, one who can fully pay and another kid who's asking for money, you can guess which student would probably have a higher chance. That will never be advertised. No website or university is going to say, we favor kids who can full pay, but just understand that is the general practice. Think about that in an international school too, right? You have two Thai families coming in, one who can pay full, the other one who says, I need 50%. You kind of have an idea of who they're going to accept, okay? Now, in terms of financial aid and scholarships, it has no bearing, right? Like you want to apply for scholarships if you can meet the merit-based. So if you have a strong profile, you should apply for, and there are so many scholarships. There's scholarships that are associated with the university, and there are scholarships outside of the university, like Gates, Millennium, Siemens. There's so many scholarships out there for Thai students, for Asian students, for left-handed. It's actually incredible. We have an entire database of that. Now, the reason why a lot of students don't do that is because it's a whole entire application, right? It's like applying to college. You have to do interviews. You have to write essays. It's highly competitive. And so scholarships, once again, have no advantage, disadvantage. If you think that you're a competitive applicant, you should apply because you can save your parents $1 or $2 or even more, right? So I hope I answered your question. The final kind of technicality about financial aid is that's why I said you need to be able to demonstrate you can pay a certain amount. If I apply and I say I can't pay a single dollar or I can't pay a minimum of 30 to 35,000 US dollars, we always tell parents don't even apply. If you cannot pay 30 to 35,000 US dollars for your kids' education in the US. Now, we're not saying you have to go to the US, right? There's fantastic universities in Thailand, Chula, Mahidol, Thammasat, etc., right? So if you want to go to the US, you have to prepare to pay at least 30 to 35,000 US dollars minimum. Obviously, if I pay more, I can be more competitive. But if I can't pay anything below that, above that, then you just won't be competitive. once again, no universities will say, if you can't pay 30, 35,000, we're not going to accept you, but you're just not going to get accepted. So I hope that makes sense. You had a question, sir? Same question. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
What would you say is the minimal income that you should, if you said, for example, you make over $3.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good question. So there is no minimal income. Actually, so I'm not a financial advisor, so I want to be careful about answering that question. But generally, we can say that families spend about 30% of their disposable income on their kids' education, like in Asia. So that's pretty high, right? Asian families spend a lot of money, and this is like schools and after schools, like lessons and all this kind of stuff, right? So I think maybe that's a number, but it's hard for me to say a certain number because there's so many factors. So for example, like if I have 3 kids, that's a very different equation than if I have 1 kid. If my mom doesn't work, but my dad works, there's dual income and not. So there's a lot of factors. What we can do is we can sit down with each individual family. If families are willing to share a little bit more, you don't have to share specific numbers, and we can kind of map it out strategically and look at it family to family. But there isn't like a magical number. Now, UC schools, University of California schools, in the past used to actually ask, how much is your annual household income? And a lot of families applying from China, Chinese students, a lot of students applying, they would actually, the max you could put is 999,999. This is like annual. So basically $1 million a year, right? And in the past, when you put 999,999, it definitely helped your application because UC schools do not give financial aid to international students. These are public universities. There's a whole bunch of them. There's 9 of them. So this is something to understand. So yeah, did I answer your question? There isn't a number, but 30% disposable income, and we can sit down and map it out family to family. How many kids do you have? 2. Yeah, so the average is 2 usually, right? Okay, what other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it matters or not, but in terms of like helping us getting in, let's say your child is a dual citizen, Thai and U.S. Does it matter? But she's studying here. Does it matter?
Absolutely, it matters. So having a U.S. passport is a significant advantage when you're applying to U.S. universities, even though your residency is not in the U.S. Meaning, so my case, right? I have children. My children have U.S. and Thai passports. When we apply for U.S. universities, as long as my wife and I can agree that U.S. because she studied in the U.K., right? But we've already agreed on this. We will use their U.S. passports. We also have residency in Georgia, right? Still pay taxes. But if you don't have residency, having a U.S. passport still is advantageous, absolutely, right? Versus applying as a Thai passport. If you're applying with a Thai passport, then you're going to be competing with other Thai citizens. And Thai students are pretty smart, right? So if I'm applying, from an international school and I'm applying for, let's say, a STEM school like MIT, guess what? I'm competing with King scholars who are International Mathematics Olympiad who do not study at ISB. They study at Trimodome Suksa, for example. But I'm a Thai passport holder. And there are certain universities in the U.S., top universities, that only recruit certain profile or type of students, right? Every year, the chance of a King Scholar coming from these top public schools getting into MIT is significantly greater than that of any international school, right? It's just the reality. So it's something we have to be aware of. Usually international schools do allow better chances for humanities, right? Or what we call liberal arts type majors, because international schools, obviously I'm studying English at an earlier age. I have a strong foundation in the humanities. So these are like liberal arts colleges like Williams, Swarthmore, Middlebury, very, very top schools, Pomona, but also like Princeton, MIT, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. These schools are also very strong in the liberal arts, right? Princeton is very strong in engineering too, but they also have a foundation in liberal arts. So I hope I answered your question there. Any other questions? Questions are better because it's better than just briefing slides, right? I can say that where you go to high school is important. Why? Because matriculation matters a lot. Matriculation means when I graduate high school, where do I go for university? If my school is new and has no track record of placing students to universities in the U.S., my chance of getting into the U.S. university significantly diminishes because that tells me that the school doesn't have the resources to help students get into the universities. Teachers may not know how to write good recommendation letters. My counselor may not even be familiar with the Common Application or UCAS portals. It's an uphill battle. But if I have a school that's been around in the market for 60 years, like Bangkok Patana School, and I'm pumping kids into the US, UK, and I have a track record, that means when I'm a US university and I see your school name from Thailand, I recognize that. I recognize that an IB score, A-level score of this means a certain caliber of students because for the past 50 years, I've been pumping kids in. So where you go to high school is very important. Now, some parents ask, IB, A-level, AP. It doesn't matter, actually. All U.S. and all global universities recognize IB, AP, A-level equivalent. It's not that one favors more than the other, right? And I'll explain to you what's better for your kid because there's not one diploma that's better or high school program that's better. It really depends on your interests and your type of kid that you have. But I think what's important to know here is you need to take the most rigorous classes that your school offers. So if my school offers IB and the most rigorous IB courses are math and physics, and I take like Thai and history for high level, and I take standard level, something else, right? And then I'm trying to apply for engineering, don't even bother applying because you're not going to get in. So colleges know, right? Colleges will look at your school and they'll say, okay, it's not about your grade. Like I could get the highest scores in the easiest classes, but colleges know that, right? Like they're experts, they're admissions officers. Their job is to be an auditor to review your profile. So it's important that you not only take high-level courses, but you, of course, perform well and do well. The second point I was going to say is IB and A-level is very similar to the UK system in that it's a pyramid that goes up and you limit in the number of subjects and courses you take because you focus deeply. So A-level, typically you take 3 to 4 courses in the last 2 years of your high school, year 13, year 12, or grade 11, grade 12, right? IB, you take 6 courses in the last 2 years, 3 standard level and 3 high level. So if I know for sure in high school, probably starting in grade 9 and 10, that I want to be like a physicist or I want to study data science, then IB A-level can be more beneficial to you because you go deeply into that subject matter, for example. But like most high school kids, if you really don't know what you want to do, AP is much better because AP is a reverse pyramid. The higher you go, the more AP courses you can take. AP courses are also a year long, whereas IB and A-level are 2 years. So the challenge that a lot of kids have is teachers come and go. A lot of expats come through here and they leave, right? They sign a 1-year, 2-year contract. So the danger of being in a 2-year IB A-level program is, let's say I have an IB math teacher. In the second year, I get a new teacher. Guess what? IB program is not the same in every single school. It's not even the same in every single teacher and the way they deliver it because it's highly subjective. So at the very beginning of the course, as a teacher, I will decide which kids in my class are 7 is a perfect score, 7 range student, a 6 range, a 5 range, and I've already categorized you into those buckets because I have to distribute certain 7s, 6s, 5s, 4s, etc. Right? And if I'm already classified as like a 4 student, it's really hard for me throughout the semester to become a 7 student. You guys know what I mean. This is like bias. This is what happens. That's why we always tell students, number 1, first impression is important. Number 2, sit in the front of the classroom. Don't sit in the back, right? Number 3, spend time with your teacher outside of the classroom. A lot of students don't know how to, because we're teenagers, develop rapport and relationship with your teachers, right? You just kind of sit there, you take notes, you answer some questions here and there, and you're just another one of many. But imagine if I walk the teacher's dog on the weekend. Imagine if I go for office hours, extra help, once a week, and I start building that relationship. Imagine if my teacher also happens to be my tennis coach or my student government sponsor, and now we develop that personal relationship. Then I go to the teacher and say, can you write my rec letter? Rec letters are so important. Universities require 2 rec letters and your counselor rec letter. 2 rec letters, and you have to get it from your grade 11, year 12, or year 13. So it would be bad to get it from your grade 12 or year 13 teacher because you only have them for 2 months and then you're applying. Unless you're in a 2-year A-level IB program, right? Then you've had them for a year. But generally, you want to target your grade 11, year 12 teachers to write your rec letter because you've had them for a year. And there's a whole bunch of strategy there too we can talk about. Okay? So we can go on and on and on, but I know we've been here for a while. We probably need to do an 11th inning stretch, right? What is this? Okay. So we have a question from online. How many colleges offer SAT test optional or test blind? This is a common question. What should be the trend for test optional in the near future? So very interesting about this. When we say test optional, it basically states that the universities do not require students to take standardized tests. When we say standardized tests, there's really only, there's 4 tests. So you have TOEFL or IELTS. TOEFL or IELTS is English as a second language. Even top Ivies like UPenn require TOEFL for students who go to international schools, right? So even if I've been in an international environment for 12 years, I need to take the TOEFL. TOEFL and IELTS are valid for 2 years. So I have to take this in grade 11 or grade 12. However, it's not a very difficult test, right? Because it's English as a second language. So it's reading, writing, listening, speaking. So that's mandatory, right? Second is SAT or ACT. In Thailand, a lot of students actually prefer the SAT because Thai universities also accept the SAT. So it's kind of common practice that students prepare for the SAT than it is the ACT. Now, schools only most recently, and COVID-19 kind of accelerated that, started advertising on their websites, test optional. Well, let me tell you, that's fake advertisement. What do I mean by that? Even though schools will say test optional on their websites, and schools will tell you when you meet an admissions officer, test optional, international students who apply, who get in, majority of them, 80-85% apply with test scores. So it's the difference of having and having not. And why would I not have when everybody that I'm competing with has? So our advice to all of our students, we haven't had any students who haven't had standardized tests when they apply. We just don't do it. Now, UC schools are test optional. UC schools will not look at tests. That is in fact true. Berkeley, UCLA, there's 9 UC schools, right? They do not care about tests, and it will continue in that direction and trend. As a matter of fact, UC schools are talking about developing their own standardized metric and test, but that's going to take another 5 years. I don't even know if they're going to roll it out, right? Because that has to do with funding from the state. Anyways, that's the UC system. All other universities, you're going to need standardized tests. The question was, what's the feature? Honestly, back and forth. Couple years, top universities said, hey, we're test optional. And then they changed 2 years later. Never mind, we're not test optional anymore. So when the policy is wavering like this, don't even bother with that. Take the test and get it done. Now, start early. You want to ideally start the SAT in grade 9 and 10 and be done. Ideally, right? If you're grade 11 right now and you're panicking because I said that, don't worry, right? You don't want to be taking the SAT in grade 12. Grade 12 is when you're applying to college. If you're taking the SAT in grade 12, your life has just become 10 times more difficult. Can you do it? Yes, but it's an uphill battle. Any other questions? Yes, please go ahead. Yeah, fantastic. 5 to 6 times a year. 5 to 6 times a year. So there are international testing dates and there are domestic testing dates, but usually the testing periods are going to be like around March, around May, around June, around August, around October, around December. So this year in the fall, there was a testing date in August. October 7th, I think, is the next testing date, and then December. November is not a testing date internationally, but it is domestically. So about 5 to 6 times a year that you should start. Yeah, good question. SAT is valid for 5 years, but I mean, nobody takes it in 8th grade. I guess you could, right? I mean, my brother had a 16-year-old classmate at MIT, so it could happen. But ideally, you want to take the SAT in grade 9 or 10 because it's valid for 5 years, meaning you just finished it in high school and you can use it for. The great thing about taking the SAT early is you can use that for competitive summer programs. So if I'm applying for competitive summer programs like in high school, right? Competitive summer programs where I get college credit, I can use the SAT score like as part of my application to make me more competitive. Okay. What other questions are there? This is great. We love engagement. We love conversation. So I think if you would like to learn more, then you can add us here online. I guess you're all here because you saw our message online. And if you want to get specific advice about your child, right? I see some of you guys brought your children. We're happy to set up a meeting, right? So we can set up one-on-one meetings with the families, and then we give you advice for your kids and how we can help mentor you. All right. Thank you very much. Sawadee ka.